My sister said I wasn't their real daughter and treated me like I didn't belong. So I made our parents wish they had chosen me first and regret ever doubting me. Growing up in our house meant learning to smile through cuts no one else could see. My parents loved both of us. They never treated me like I was temporary, or lesser, or borrowed. They took me in when I was 8 years old, and from the first day, they told me I belonged. But Brooke never let me forget that I had not been born into the family the way she had. She was 6 when I arrived, old enough to understand another child was entering her world, and young enough to turn that confusion into cruelty. Whenever our parents were out of earshot, she would lean close and whisper things like, "They only got you because the agency had a 2-for-1 sale," or, "At least I know where I came from." I tried not to let it bother me, but every comment chipped away at my confidence. My parents always said that after they saw me at the agency, they felt like I was meant to be part of our family. They said choosing me was not charity, it was love. I wanted to believe that completely. Most days, I did. But then Brooke would smile across the dinner table like a normal sister, wait until nobody was looking, and remind me that I was secondhand. She never accepted me. She hid my homework and laughed when I cried because I thought I had lost it. She broke things around the house and blamed me before I could defend myself. At school, she told other kids I was used goods. I learned early that defending myself usually made things worse, so I worked hard instead. I put my head down, studied, took advanced classes, and stayed up late into the night trying to become so good that nobody could question why I belonged. Brooke took the opposite road. She partied, skipped assignments, and barely kept a C average. My parents noticed the difference, of course, but they never wanted to compare us. They praised us equally, even when Brooke had done the bare minimum and I had pushed myself past exhaustion. I understood why they did it. They wanted peace. They wanted fairness. But their silence gave Brooke room to believe that nothing she did had consequences. Everything changed during our senior year. Brooke was failing 3 classes and at serious risk of not graduating. Instead of studying, she spent her time making TikToks about how adopted kids were damaged goods and posting Instagram stories mocking my generic brand DNA. She thought she was funny. Her friends laughed. I pretended not to care, but I took screenshots anyway, because something inside me had finally stopped pretending this was normal. One afternoon, I overheard her on the phone with a friend. Her voice was casual, almost bored, like she was talking about the weather. "My parents only adopted her because they felt sorry for her," she said. "But watch. When college applications come around, they'll realize blood is thicker than water. All their money is going to their real daughter's education." That was the last straw. I had already been accepted to Princeton with a partial scholarship, but I had not told anyone yet. I had been holding the news close, partly because I was proud, partly because I was scared of what it would awaken in Brooke. I decided not to announce anything. I decided to let Brooke dig her own grave. So when she skipped class to hang out with her boyfriend, I kept quiet. When she forged our mom's signature on a failed math test, I looked the other way. When she lied, mocked, bragged, and coasted through the weeks like the universe owed her a prize for being biological, I let her keep going. I did not push her. I did not sabotage her. I simply stopped protecting her from herself. The day college decisions were released, our parents gathered us in the living room. We sat with our laptops open, the glow from the screens making everyone look pale and nervous. My father sat with one hand resting against his chin, watching in silence. My mother paced back and forth with a cup of tea in her hands that had gone cold long before anyone drank it. Brooke looked too calm, and with her, that was almost always a warning sign. "Come on, Brooke," my mother said, forcing a smile. "Open the email already." Brooke huffed like the whole thing was wasting her time. "Relax. I know I got in. I don't even need to look." She still believed her own lie. She had sent applications to 7 colleges, even though her grades barely met the minimum requirements. For weeks, she had spent more time building an Instagram aesthetic for her acceptance posts than actually filling out her applications. Delusion was not a phase in Brooke's life. It was a thick layer she wore like perfume. She clicked the first email. The room went silent for 1 second, but that second stretched until it became a weight in the air. Brooke read the screen. Then she frowned. She scrolled, pulled the laptop closer, and read again. "This is a mistake," she murmured. "Honey?" my father asked, his voice already heavy with concern. "Rejected." Brooke spat the word like poison. They said my application doesn't meet the academic requirements. This is wrong. I had recommendation letters. My stomach twisted, but I held back the smile that threatened to break through. It is cruel to rejoice in someone's downfall. I knew that. But after years of swallowing every insult, there was something almost cathartic about watching her arrogance crumble, layer by layer, as if reality had finally arrived to return everything she had thrown into the world. One by one, Brooke opened the other emails. Every response was a different version of the same polite rejection. Unfortunately, your candidacy was not selected in this cycle. We regret to inform you. Thank you for your interest. She turned as white as paper. For the first time in a long time, Brooke had nothing to say. My father cleared his throat. Sweetheart, maybe we can look at other options. Community college, technical programs. No. She slammed the laptop shut. This doesn't make sense. I deserve to get in. That was when I opened my email. I did not make a dramatic announcement. I simply turned my laptop so the screen was visible on the table. At the top of Princeton's digital letter, the word congratulations shone like a bell ringing in a silent room. My mother came closer and read slowly. Then she looked at me with tears already gathering in her eyes. You already knew? I nodded. Why didn't you tell us? Because I knew today would come, I said. And I wanted it to speak for itself. Brooke gave a dry laugh. Of course. The prodigy orphan. How nice. You think this changes anything? I don't think so, I replied, looking directly at her. But you will. She got up so fast that the chair almost fell backward. Are you really going to spend money on her? On someone who isn't even your real daughter? The slap came from a place no one expected. It was not directed at me. It came from our mother. It was not forceful, not violent, but it was sharp, direct, and real. A dry little snap crossed the room and lingered there like a ghost. Never speak like that again, my mother said. Her voice was firm. You can be angry, you can be frustrated, you can be sad, but that does not give you the right to be cruel. Brooke stood frozen. Tears gathered in her eyes, but she held them back with stubborn pride. You chose her, she said. You always chose her. You only had me because it was easy. She was bought. My mother exhaled but did not answer. My father tried to touch Brooke's shoulder, and she jerked away like his hand was fire. Then she ran upstairs. Her bedroom door slammed so hard, the sound echoed through the house like a scream with no voice. She did not come down for dinner. She did not come down the next morning either. Or for lunch. Her food sat untouched. Her door stayed locked. For the first time in years, her Instagram went silent. The real shock came 2 days later, when my parents received an email from the school principal. Brooke had been reported for plagiarism in 2 assignments. One of her teachers had proof. Screenshots, identical texts, matching sources. The school would begin a disciplinary process. And if the accusations were confirmed, she could be prevented from graduating. My father spent hours sitting silently on the porch with his phone in his hand. My mother cried quietly in the bathroom. I went to my room and gently closed the door. For the first time, I felt no pity. Not anymore. Brooke had created the world she was living in. I had simply let it collapse. But I knew she was not going to accept the fall quietly. Brooke was like a wounded animal, and wounded animals bite. It took 3 days. On the morning of the 4th, I found her sitting at the kitchen table as if nothing had happened. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and sunglasses covered her eyes, even though she was inside the house. She stirred a bowl of cereal with no intention of eating it. When she saw me, she raised an eyebrow. Did you enjoy the show? She asked. Have you told the school too, or do you want me to go served on a silver platter? I didn't even have to say anything, I replied, taking an apple from the fruit bowl. You were great at digging your own grave. She smiled, but it was not a human smile. It was the kind of smile that belongs in alleys and broken mirrors. You think you won, don't you? It's not a competition. Of course it is. It always was. You only won because nobody expects anything from someone who came from trash. I did not respond. Not because the words did not hurt, but because a new part of me, a harder part, understood that she wanted a reaction. She wanted conflict. She wanted something that would bleed. What hurt more was seeing my mother standing in the hallway, hearing every word. The spoon slipped from Brooke's hand when she noticed her. If that is how you think about your sister, my mother said, Then maybe you need to rethink more than just your grades. Then she turned and walked away. Brooke had never tolerated being ignored. That was the first slap of ice. The school's punishment came quickly. Indefinite suspension, a formal investigation, and no guarantee that she would graduate. She cried in her room the first day, but not from regret. It was rage. It was humiliation. I heard muffled sobs, then objects hitting the walls, then silence. The following week, I discovered that she had tried to access my email. A suspicious login warning flashed on my phone. Someone had attempted to log in with my password in the middle of the night. I confronted her immediately. "Do you think I'm an idiot?" she said. "You left your laptop unlocked. You went through my things. You meddled in my life. I'm just returning the favor." There was a pause between us. One of those seconds of mutual recognition when two people finally admit who they are to each other. In that invisible tension, there was an undeclared war. And war, I realized, required preparation. That was when I started keeping evidence. Screenshots, copies of conversations, records of the small sabotages, the whispers, the deleted emails, everything. I did not collect it because I was ready to use it. Not yet. I collected it as a shield. I knew Brooke would not stop, and I could not allow myself to enter her game unarmed. Brooke became more subtle, and that made her more dangerous. When fury turns into strategy, cruelty becomes patient. She began whispering to our parents about me. She said, I had changed a lot lately. She said I seemed distant and maybe overwhelmed by academic pressure. At first it sounded like concern, but I knew the tone. Poison in tiny drops. My mother started asking me more often if I was okay. My father suggested that I relax with my studies. One Sunday, they called me into the living room to talk about academic pressure. Brooke watched from a distance with a half smile, like someone playing dominoes and waiting for the right piece to fall. "You've been very closed off," my father said. "We just want to make sure you're happy." "You're hearing this from her, aren't you?" My parents looked at each other, and their silence told me everything. That night, I left my laptop open on purpose, with a fake email about a supposed suspension of mine for using cheat sheets on a practice test. It was bait. The next morning, my calculus teacher called me in for a strange conversation. "We received an anonymous email about you," she said. "It claims you cheated on the last exam." I acted surprised. I acted frightened. The IP address connected to the anonymous email matched the same suspicious activity that had tried to access my profile days earlier. And because I had documented everything, I showed it all to the coordinator. The screenshots, the access history, and the hallway security footage showing Brooke passing by my room that night. The school acted quickly. This time, there was no suspension. It was expulsion. The sound of Brooke's scream when she received the notice is something I will never forget. Because it was raw and animal, the last roar of a cornered beast. She tried to blame everyone. The school, the teachers, my parents, me, but nothing stuck. Her mask had fallen, and underneath it, there was nothing but dust. The next day, as I was leaving for school, I saw a suitcase by the front door. "She's going to Aunt Anna's house," my mother said. Until we know what to do." "She was expelled, Mom." "She is still your sister." "Is she?" My mother did not answer. She only hugged me, a strange hug full of silences. As Aunt Anna's car pulled away with Brooke in the back seat, Brooke looked through the window and smiled. Not with anger, not with pain. It was a strange smile, like someone who knew something the rest of us had not discovered yet. In that moment, a part of me knew this was not over. The following week, the house felt cleaner, lighter. The silence between rooms left space for sounds. The ticking clock, the wind brushing against the hallway window, the backyard gate creaking in the evening. My parents moved around with careful steps, as if they felt guilty about removing a piece they had never asked to remove, but could no longer deny was broken. I kept going to school, packing for Princeton, and counting the days until I could leave. But even while studying, reading, or eating lunch, I felt a shadow behind my neck. It felt like something moving outside my field of vision. Then the notes began. The first one was tucked inside my backpack, folded 4 times and unsigned. It was on plain paper, written in careful handwriting that looked too fake to be natural. "You may have won, but nobody likes someone who steps on others to climb up." I showed it to my parents. They tried to treat it like ordinary teenage resentment. "It must be envy," my mother said, attempting a smile. You're going to Princeton. That bothers people. But it was more than that. I knew it. The second note was left inside my school locker. Everyone has secrets, including you. I just need one to bring everything down. That was when I began to suspect that Brooke had left a part of herself behind. Even from a distance, she could still move pieces on the board. There were people at school who defended her. It was a small group, but loud enough to matter. They saw her as a victim. The girl expelled by an elitist school, the betrayed sister, the one nobody understood. Among them was Ryan, her boyfriend. I was not sure anymore. On Tuesday the following week, I saw him leaning against the school wall, waiting for someone. When he noticed me, he smiled. "Hey," he said. "Can I walk you home?" "No. She just wants to talk, you know. She's sorry." "I think you guys should try." "You think?" I asked. "Or did she tell you to think that?" He shrugged. "You won, okay? Everyone knows that. But she's not doing well." I kept walking without saying another word. That same day, my room was invaded. Nothing was stolen, nothing was broken. It was worse than that. Everything had been disturbed. My closet had been ransacked and rearranged just enough to let me know someone had touched it. My Princeton notebook was sitting on the bed, open to a page where, months earlier, I had written that I did not know whether I could handle the pressure. I had written that sometimes I felt alone, displaced, like I was performing a role that had never truly belonged to me. On that page, there was a new note. "It's going to be beautiful when everyone discovers that the perfect girl is falling apart inside." With that paper between my fingers, I understood that Brooke was not simply stalking me. She was building a narrative. A campaign. She was trying to turn me into her. The next day, I told my parents. "Did you lock the door?" my father asked, focusing on the detail instead of the violation. "Do you really think I'm making this up?" My mother tried to hug me, but I stepped away. "She is still here," I said, "even from far away. And you keep pretending this is just a phase." "It is not. She is dangerous." They did not respond. That night, I locked my bedroom door with a key. I hid my notes, changed every password, and left my phone recording in silent mode, pointed at the door. Nothing happened that night. But the next day, the video showed something strange. At 2:43 inches the morning, the hallway light turned on. My bedroom doorknob turned twice, unsuccessfully. Then there was silence. The light went out. I showed the video to the principal. I showed it to my parents. Everyone went quiet. "Do you think it was her?" my mother asked. "If it wasn't her," I said, "then someone even worse is still loose around here." On Saturday, Aunt Anna called. Her voice was flat. "She's not here anymore," she said. "She left last night. Said she was going for a walk. She left her phone, took money, and never came back." My father dropped the phone onto the table. My mother sat down on the floor without saying a word. Me? I closed my eyes, because I knew exactly what that meant. Brooke was loose, and now she had nothing left to lose. In the first 24 hours, my parents did what adults do. They called friends. They called the police. They called hospitals. They filed a missing person report. They used words like worried and anxious, but they avoided the word fear. Not fear of what might have happened to Brooke. Fear of what Brooke might be doing. My father installed new locks on the windows. My mother checked the front door every hour like a ritual. I looked over my shoulder all the time, even inside the house, as if Brooke might emerge from the wall like a living crack. At school, tension was obvious. Some people knew. Others suspected. Some began looking at me, as if I had caused all of it. Ryan was one of them. He stared at me in the hallways, like he knew something important. I pretended not to notice, but I knew he was still with her emotionally, and maybe in more ways than that. On Tuesday, I found my locker vandalized. Written across it was, "Those who climb by stepping on others fall bleeding." Administration cleaned it off and gave a generic warning to the class. Nobody took responsibility. I did not cry. I did not shake. But that night, my father slept with a kitchen knife beside his bed, and my mother pushed a chair against their bedroom door. Brooke was becoming a presence. Not only a physical threat, but a fever in the environment. She lived in classmates' looks, teachers' fear, and the neighborhood's silence. What no one wanted to say aloud, but everyone knew, was simple. Brooke was capable of anything. Then she appeared. Not at home. At graduation. My graduation was 1 week away. I had been invited to give the main speech as the class standout, The student who got into Princeton. The one who had overcome so many obstacles, as the principal said, smiling without knowing half the truth. The night before the ceremony, I received an email from the school confirming the speech. Attached was the final text, supposedly revised by the coordinator. But the file was not mine. Instead of my speech, there was a manifesto. It began like a public letter for Brooke. It told the truth about me, except every truth had been twisted. I was painted as a manipulative girl who ruined her own sister out of envy, forged evidence, stole her place, lied to everyone, and hid behind being a poor adopted orphan to excuse a cruel and ambitious mind. The last sentence hit like a punch. Maybe it's true that blood doesn't make family, but sometimes blood is what drips when the mask falls. I dropped my phone. Then I ran to my laptop. The original file had been deleted and replaced. Every copy, version, backup, and email I could reach was gone or inaccessible. I did not know how she had managed it, but the mark was obvious. Brooke. The next day, I took everything to the administration. The school's IT team confirmed that the text had been sent from my email, but the access had come from an unknown IP using my login. Ryan worked part-time in the library. He had access to the computers. The school asked me to rewrite the speech. They promised to review it personally. Just a scare, they said. But they knew. She was closer than ever. On ceremony day, my mother helped me put on my gown. Her hands trembled, but her smile stayed firm. You made it this far, she said. Nobody can take that away. In the car, my father said nothing. He was afraid the ceremony might end with more than diplomas. At school, the gates were watched more carefully. But surveillance does not stop ghosts. The auditorium was packed. White chairs lined the floor. Artificial flowers framed the stage. The air smelled sweet and suffocating, like cheap perfume and nervous sweat. The speeches began. Students, coordinators, parents. Words about futures and dreams floated through the room while I felt my pulse in my throat. When my name was called, I walked to the stage with the world on my shoulders. Each step felt like a step toward judgment. I took the microphone, breathed in, and looked out at the audience. She was there, back row. Dark shirt, hair tied back, dark glasses, a cap pulled low over her face. But I would have recognized her even in complete darkness. My blood froze. I continued anyway. Good evening, everyone, I began, my voice clearer than I felt. We are here today to celebrate, to remember that we made it this far, and that alone is an achievement. But we are also here to acknowledge that the path to this stage is not always fair, and not always kind. The speech I planned was gone, so I gave another one. I spoke about growing up with someone trying to erase you. I spoke about fighting for a place in a house that had already been built for someone else. I spoke about pain, silent courage, and the difference between surviving cruelty and becoming cruel. I did not say Brooke's name, but every word was a subtle blade. Brooke stared at me like a sphinx. She did not blink. She did not smile. She looked like someone waiting for a signal. I finished to applause, but eyes were turning toward the back row. She was gone. I left the stage with my heart caught in my throat and went straight to the backstage room, accompanied by 2 security guards at the administration's request. Inside the room, there was a brown envelope with my name on it. Inside was a photo. It showed me as a child, asleep in my bed. In the corner of the room stood a figure, poorly lit, with shadow covering most of her face. But I recognized the scarf around her neck. Brooke. On the back of the photo, written in red pen, was a sentence. The house isn't yours. It never was. And I still have the key. I stared at those words for so long that they began to blur. The paper in my hands was ridiculously light, but it felt like it was pressing against my chest. It was more than a note. It was a warning, an oath, a sentence. I did not tell my parents that night. I already knew what would happen. More locks, more surveillance, and more empty promises. But none of that had stopped Brooke before. The problem was that they still thought she was a person in crisis. I had already understood that she was an expanding threat. The next day, I checked every lock in the house. They were all intact. There were no broken windows, no signs of forced entry. The guest room, where Brooke had slept for years, still held remnants. Books she never read, blank notebooks, photos of us that now looked like jokes. Inside one of the closets, I found something that should not have been there. A dark wooden box, locked with a simple padlock. It was dusty, but Brooke did not leave anything to chance. I broke the padlock with a hairpin. Inside were paper clippings, old notes, printed messages, and pieces of me. Messages I had written, gifts I had given, scraps of school assignments with teachers' comments. It was an archive of obsession. But the worst thing inside was the diary. It was not hers. It was mine. My old diary had disappeared when I was 12. I thought I had thrown it away by accident or lost it during a cleaning spree. But there it was, with pages marked by strange fingers. Sentences were circled. Passages were highlighted. There were small annotations in the margins, like an editor revising someone else's story. She had been studying me for years. On the last page, in recent ink, Brooke had written, "The world loves you now, but the world loves victims. Let's see what happens when you become the villain." I closed the diary and sat on the floor. I breathed slowly, because there was nothing else I could do. This was it. Brooke was not going to stop. She was not going to run away. She was going to invert me. She was going to turn the world around until I looked like the monster and she looked like the victim. And worse than that, I felt alone. I went back to my room and locked the door. Then I picked up my phone and called the only person who might still be in contact with her, Ryan. He answered on the third ring, voice low, sleepy, or pretending to be. "Are you with her?" I asked. Silence. "I know you are," I said. "Just tell me one thing. Is she okay?" More silence. Then a whisper. "She's calm," he said. "But not like before. It's like she has decided something, you know?" Decided what? She won't tell me. But she's collecting things. Photos, videos, recordings of you, of the school, of your mom, everything. Why? She wants to tell her version. Make the world listen. But I don't think she wants justice. I think she wants a scene. My throat tightened. "Tell me where she is." "I can't." "Ryan. Be careful tomorrow," he said. She said it would be tomorrow. Then he hung up. The next morning, my mother woke me before my alarm, pale, her phone trembling. "Open the school group," she said. Now. I opened it. Brooke had posted a video. The title was, "The Truth About My Perfect Sister." The thumbnail was a montage of photos of us. Me smiling on the graduation stage, Brooke crying on the school sidewalk, our father in the background with a disappointed expression. I clicked. The screen went dark, and Brooke's voice began low and controlled, like the narrator of a grim documentary. She spoke about me, but not as a sister. She spoke about me as a character, a villain. She retold our entire life with the roles reversed. She said I had sabotaged her since childhood. She said I had spread rumors, forged evidence, manipulated our parents, and used my status as a poor adopted orphan as a shield to hide a cruel and ambitious mind. The video was full of photos, edited clips, and context cut so sharply it bled into lies. Even my graduation speech was there, spliced into fragments that made my words sound calculating and cold. When the video ended, I was shaking. The comments were already appearing. "Damn, I never thought she was like that. She really does seem calculating in that speech. Adopted and fake on top of it. Wow." My father came into the room with his face red. "We're going to get this deleted. Sue, call the police." My mother sat down and cried like someone had lost something that was still standing in front of her, but I stayed quiet. Because in that moment, I understood that Brooke had succeeded. She did not want justice. She did not even want to come home. She wanted to leave me here in her place. Deep down, I knew she had won something. Maybe not the war, but the stage. The rest of the day became a whirlwind. The school suspended everything, pending investigation. The internet became hell. People looked at me on the street as if they sensed something was wrong without knowing what. Judgment followed me silently and constantly. That night, I received a message from an unknown number. "Now we really are sisters. You feel what I felt. You sleep in fear. You wake up trying to remember who you are. Welcome to my world. With love, Brooke." No matter how much I wanted to hate her or destroy her, the truth was simple. She no longer needed to be here to haunt me. She had already entered through the front door with the key that, after all, had always been hers.